Welcome to the SciFi Pubcast. Come for a drink, but stay for the speculation. Dr. Randal Graham, author of Beforelife, joins us to talk about the Star Trek cruise and his recent experiences having just returned from it. Spoiler alert, he's already booked his cabin for next year's cruise. You could say it floats his boat. So grab a drink and be prepared to feel very jealous. Nothing beats a good port. This is the SciFi Pubcast. Greetings, welcome to the SciFi Pubcast, the podcast that tries to be a pub, and perhaps someday a pub that tries to be a podcast. And as always, the SciFi Pubcast is looking for people to visit our bar. So if you're passionate about something, you're going to be on a podcast, let us know. Hit us up on social media or send an email. Yes, an email to management@scifipubcast.space. My name's Joel. I'm looking around the good old bar and, oh my God, Randal? Is that Randal Graham? What are you doing here,
I'm here
Randal?
indeed.
Randal
I'm
Graham.
very excited to be here to chat about everything that happened on the Star Trek cruise.
Yes, Randal Graham, our writer in residence, author of Beforelife, which is a novel, which is really great, and he's writing a sequel. And I usually look at Carrie. Hi, Carrie.
Hi, Joel.
But Randal, listen, it's just a shock
That's
to see
okay.
you. Yeah, and
It's fine.
People have often said that it's a shock when they see me.
yeah, good. And of course, we have Derek. Hi, Derek.
It's always a shock to see a customer in here.
Yeah, there we go. Yes, so that's the crew.
Derek too, but we don't talk about that very often.
Oh my God! Look at this. So we have Randal Graham, who's just recently off the Star Trek cruise, and he's walking to the SciFi Pubcast. And what can happen? I think we are going to hear some great stories about his little, time at sea. But before we do, Carrie, how's your day been?
Not bad. The caffeine's finally starting to kick in. Yeah, so I'm awake now.
Yeah, we're recording on an afternoon after, on a weekend, and I'm drinking lots of coffee as well because, of course, I was out last night. But I'm not too bad, so let's see where things take us.
Wait, you were out last night? You're hungover today? I'm shocked.
No, I'm not really all that hungover, but still, it's the principle of it. And then, of course, we have Derek. Hey, Derek, how you doing, man?
I'm pretty good. We had a snowstorm last night, so I had to spend a little bit of time digging my car out of the snow.
That's terrible. Well, awful. The joys of living in Pennsylvania, right?
Yeah. And the other unfortunate thing was that we were actually supposed to have I'm in a writers group, and our big annual conference was supposed to be yesterday, but we had to cancel it because of the snowstorm. And it's been moved all the way back to April, 3 months from now.
Yeah, use that pain as motivation to write. Milk it, man. Use that. Suffering's great for that.
I'm almost done with my 10th novel, of which only one of them have been published.
But you're writing it for yourself, right? You're writing it for the world at large. Publication, I don't know. I think it's overrated.
Well, hopefully someone will eventually read them.
Right. Okay.
Well, in the meantime, I feel the need to brag that it was like gorgeous and 70 degrees over in LA yesterday, so ha.
Yes, and it's freezing cold in Ottawa. Poor Ottawa. But before we move on, Derek, how's our kitchen doing?
Pretty good. In honor of Randall's Star Trek cruise, I prepared some food that I can only assume was on, so he can tell us. For example, we've got Romulan nails, which is what you Canadians call freedom fries. I believe that's your term for it.
Nice.
Oh, God.
And we've got saurian candy, which I'm pretty sure was already green and scaly when I got it like that, so that's normal. And, of course, we've got the most disgusting form of food in all of Star Trek, the Jumja stick from Deep Space Nine and Bajor. And as I always like to say, you'll want to give our Jumja stick a hearty lick. Trademark.
Nice.
Oh, God.
What, no gach?
I think the Jumja stick is more disgusting than gawk for some reason.
Besides, how do you really want to know how much stuff has started, living in the kitchen, Randall?
I think I need sanitizer to be in here.
Yeah, the gach is traditionally supposed to be served live, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are probably some equivalents back in the kitchen if we really want to go looking for them, which I don't.
Yeah, it's a good thing
Why I
that.
bring my own food.
Yeah, it's a good thing.
Well,
that-
they were dead at one point, but then they came back to life.
Well, it's a good thing this podcast doesn't make money for mostly tax reasons and conflict of interest reasons. But there you go. Wow, just frightening all around. So that's why we drink. Well, one of the many reasons why. So with me, let's see. What's up in Joe's life? I baked bread for the first time, so that's cool. Can you say midlife crisis?
Wait. By hand, or did you use a bread maker?
Bread machine. I bought it at Walmart. By
that's
hand. Come on. One thing at a time.
I'm sorry. I happen to think that that machine is kind of cheating, but okay.
Technology. We're on a sci-fi show, for God's sake.
Might as well just go buy a loaf at the
right.
store at that point.
Right.
Well.
Sorry.
All right. What else? Oh, I'm getting excited for Star Wars Celebration in Chicago happening this April. And I think I'm the only one of the four of us who's going to that. So, yeah, really cool. And really exciting for that.
Yeah.
Excited for that. Housekeeping. We got none for the show. Let's move on to our beer recommendation, which is the part where I actually go out and I have a beer and then I basically say, hey, this is a good beer. Try it. It's very different. And today I'm going to shill for Perth Brewery, which is a place outside of Ottawa, because I'm in Ottawa and I get to drink all the local craft beer. They did one in combination with this restaurant group called Whalebone, and they did a Whalebone Oyster Stout. So see what I did there? Oyster, Star Trek cruise, ocean, yeah?
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Amazing, isn't it? So it's 5.1% alcohol, and it's an IBU rating of 21 out of 100. Check it out. Oyster Stout. Yes, I can't make this stuff up. Right. Okay, so I'm looking at my show notes. Okay, I got topic, Randal Graham. He's some sort of law professor / novelist. He might have taught me at law school once upon a time. Yeah, it's hazy. That's like 10 years ago.
Well, you were definitely in my class, but I'm not sure if I successfully taught you anything.
Yeah. Oh, ethics. Right. I was in your ethics class. Okay. Good. Gotcha. I took 3 of your classes, but that's another story. That's another interview. So I'm looking at my show notes, and literally the question I have, Randal, what's up?
Well, right now, my temperature slightly. I have what I have learned is called affectionately cruise or con crud when you return from a convention or any other big gathering of people with something of a flu, sort of the inevitable result of flying around in an airplane in January. So, yeah, I'm a little under the weather. But apart from that, I'm still deliriously happy about having been on the cruise. It was absolutely fantastic.
That's amazing.
Most excellent. I want to be jealous, but my pocketbook tells me that not to be.
Yeah, once I win the lotto, I'm totally going on this.
Yeah, I'm booked for next year as well. I made that decision pretty quickly. Well, it was a joint decision. I had to ask my lovely wife because spending a chunk of vacation apart is, not necessarily the ideal. We do like to take our trips together, but she saw how much fun I was having when I was posting photos on Instagram and Twitter and whatnot, and she said, "You absolutely must go again." So within a day of coming home, I was online booking again.
Wow.
Wow.
I got what to say with something like that. Oof, wow. Okay.
Women often tell me you absolutely must go.
Okay. Randall, perhaps it's a good place to start. What actually is a Star Trek cruise and what is involved? And tell us generally, what's this thing you're talking about?
Sure. It's essentially, if you've ever been to a Star Trek convention, which, believe it or not, I have not. I have never been to a Star Trek convention. It's
You haven't?
I have not, unless you count
Oh, they're
the cruise.
so much fun. Or at least
But
they were in the
it's
90s.
Essentially a Star Trek convention on the ocean, and it's fantastic. We depart from the port of Miami. We left on January 4th and sailed till January 10th. And it was just an absolutely glorious time. We had several ports of call. We stopped at Great Stirrup Cay, which is a little private island that Norwegian cruise lines lands on and has various shops and things there for you. Then we went to the Cayman Islands. Then we went on to Jamaica and then back. But the destinations were sort of beside the point as far as I was concerned. There were events that you could participate in on those islands. But for me, the heart of the cruise was the ship itself, with all of the Star Trek events going on constantly. And I guess the big important feature to note for people who are unfamiliar with the Star Trek cruise is that your sailing, well, you're not sailing, you're cruising with a lot of the stars from various Star Trek series. So Will Wheaton was there, Jonathan Frakes was there, Brent Spiner, Jason Isaacs, Chase Masterson, Max Gredenchik, so many people. And Kenneth Mitchell was there. He was fantastic. Denise Crosby, who played Tasha Yar. The list goes on, but you get the idea that there were quite a number. Nana Visitor also was there. And I'm just looking through my photos of people who I managed to catch photos of, sitting near me or being around. Casey Biggs, who played Damar. I ended up having dinner sitting beside him 2 nights in a row. And so you're hobnobbing with some of your favorite stars. You're getting their insights on the Star Trek franchise. And a really interesting thing that happens is that every night, if you've ever been on a cruise before, which this was also my first cruise, there are big sort of Broadway-style productions that happen in the evening in the big shipboard theaters. And the cast of Star Trek, individually or sometimes in groups, would put on these elaborate production shows for you to enjoy. So one night, Gates McFadden, who played Dr. Crusher on TNG, did just a fantastic song and dance routine that she had written herself and prepared over the years. And it was a little bit about her life and history and her engagement with the show. She's just terrific. Robert Picardo, who played the Doctor on Voyager, he did a 2-man show with his singing partner, Jordan Bennett. And that was terrific as well. Brent Spiner did a 1-man show where he sang and danced for All Assembled. It was terrific. So you get to go to these shows and be entertained by people for whom you already feel great affection, if you're a big fan of the show, and get a little bit of insight into what they are doing when they're not being on Star Trek. And maybe even more fascinating than that is just bumping into them while you're doing things. You're hanging out by a pool and Rene Auberjonois, Odo, shows up and says, "Hello, how are you?" You just sit and have a chat with him for a few minutes. These little shipboard encounters are also pretty fantastic. I had a great chat with Will Wheaton and his wife, Ann Wheaton, and we covered a ton of topics. We talked for about 15 minutes and talked about Will's new book that's coming out and Anne's book, Piggy and Pug, a children's book that she had coming out. And then we talked about Beforelife. And then we talked about Will Wheaton's advocacy on behalf of persons with various kinds of mental illness, particularly depression and anxiety. And you just get to know a little bit about these people and experience them as humans and fellow travelers rather than these iconic stars that you're used to seeing on the big or small screen. So that, in a nutshell, is what the cruise is all about.
That's awesome.
And it's 24/7 Star Trek. Like, there's literally not a moment when there isn't something interesting going on. And each day you get your mission log for the forthcoming day, telling you all of the events that are coming on. You're given a master list at the outset, but things vary over time. And it's the only difficulty on the cruise is deciding what you're going to skip because you want to be going to something else at the same time. There was so much going on, and it was fabulous.
Question, Randall, because I saw some pictures floating around the Twitterverse. Was there really a Colonel Sanders wandering around the deck, or was that supposed to be Mark Twain?
That it was Colonel Sanders, and you could tell because he looked exactly like Colonel Sanders. Some people did think he was supposed to be Mark Twain, but dude was carrying a bucket of chicken around.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and he actually had a little name tag that said Colonel Sanders, and he was so committed to being in character. I don't know what the guy's deal is. I said hello to him a couple of times, and he was very nice, but he was so committed to being in character that at the costume party, he came still in his Colonel Sanders outfit, but with a Star Trek costume over top of his Colonel Sanders outfit. So dude came as Colonel Sanders dressed as a Star Trek guy. It was awesome.
Wow.
I was going to ask.
There was also a Santa Claus.
I'm trying to figure out what Colonel Sanders has to do with Star Trek, but I mean, I don't care. This is great.
Yeah, I don't know what the guy's deal was again.
I guess Colonel Sanders can be a Star Trek fan, right?
Sure, why not?
Were there a lot of people cosplaying?
Oh, yeah, huge.
I mean, more than just like a Star Trek uniform, but like actual, more elaborate costumes.
Absolutely.
Makeup.
There was a theme every night, and the themes of each night tend to lend themselves toward cosplay. One night was a 60s theme, so a lot of people came wearing tie-dyed stuff, or they'd be Star Trek characters dressed up in tie-dyed stuff, like Star Trek carriers dressed up to look like 60s people. There was a Risa party where it was sort of I think it was called Festival of the Moon, where people dressed up as though they were going to Risa for the night. Again, oftentimes as Star Trek characters getting ready to go to Risa. There was a pajama party night where people wore Star Trek pajamas. I wore my my Star Trek robe, which looks like a Commander Data type robe, like engineering or security colors. There were lots of people in regular Star Trek uniforms, really elaborate makeup, people with full-on Klingon gear. One of the nights was actually Q's costume party, so hosted by John Delancey, who played Q, who was also really fun to have on the cruise. He hosted this costume party where you could go and register your costume, and I think there were 100 and some entrants, and they pared that down to the top 20 or so. And then based on the cheers of the crowd, they picked a winner. And some of those costumes were just fantastic. One guy who did quite well dressed up as Pennywise from It, but also it was Pennywise, but an Andorian Starfleet officer. So he had like the Starfleet uniform and then Pennywise's head in blue. Yeah, that was fantastic.
Complete with antennae?
He didn't have antenna, no, but he did have the big crazy white hair, which was awesome. But yeah, his costume was fantastic. Another guy came as Data, but Data from the Fistful of Data's episode. So when he had the mustache and the black hat and the gun, that was fabulous. There were two, my favorite costumes. These guys, I think they came second in the costume contest, were two guys who were dressed up as the aliens from Farpoint Station, as in like the big jellyfish aliens. And their tentacles lit up. Like it was incredibly elaborate and would have taken, weeks and weeks of work to put this together. But people take the cosplay really seriously. And there's something fantastic about just going to get some breakfast and a Borg walks by. It was wall-to-wall Star Trek. No matter what you were doing, something Star Trek related was happening. Someone was in costume. For costume night, I wore a NASA flight suit that my wife bought me for Christmas because that's the sort of thing that happens in my house. And and that was fun. And my buddy Tom dressed up as Captain Kirk. He was the fellow traveling with me. And the costumes were quite fantastic.
Was there ever a Beta Z wedding theme?
No, but there was a wedding. There were wedding-related things taking place. Chase Masterson, who she's fantastic. She played Lita on Deep Space Nine. And just to make everyone jealous, she hugged me and said, "Oh, Rom," when she hugged me, which was great. Because I told her, we were just standing there chatting, and I said to her, that we love her character and that the way she hit that line, "Oh, Rom," throughout the series was just fantastic. And so she said it and gave me a hug. And I thought, okay, that's one of those moments that you're never going to forget. That was great. She's just such a kind person. But her shtick, if you want to call it a shtick, her brand, I guess, is all about love and kindness and being good to each other. And she comes up with various ways to celebrate that on the cruise. And one of them is to host a ceremony in which people renew their wedding vows, where couples register in advance with her, and they're either celebrating anniversaries or they just want to renew their vows. And she hosts this ceremony where everyone renews their marriage vows, and that's a lovely thing.
Okay, Randall.
That's cool. By the way, Derek, that there's not going to be a Beta Z themed wedding. That's
I was wondering if anybody got that reference or not.
You were going for the nudity?
Yeah.
Of course he was, Randall. How long have we been doing this?
That's true. Well, there was an awful lot of near nudity just because you're on a cruise, right? So everyone's running around in bathing suits.
Oh my!
Now Derek wants to go.
If he could just figure out how to get there for free, yeah, sure.
Well, I'm sure they need cooks.
Myself in Randall's suitcase.
I'm sure they need cooks on the cruise. That would be actually a good idea. Get a job
that's a good point.
Yes.
Randall, no, don't do that.
That's actually one of the highlights of the cruise for me. Well, I mean, all of the Star Trek stuff was a highlight, but just setting aside Star Trek for a moment, getting to know the folks who work on the ship. I would tend to chat with the people who were serving me food or the people who were preparing the food, the maitre d' in one of the restaurants, and just chatting with them about their lives because I don't know if this is common on cruise ships. I imagine it is. Everyone has a name tag, of course, but underneath it, it gives you their country of origin. And they hire people from all over the world because it's a cruise that operates all over the world, a cruise ship that operates all over the world. And just learning their stories, learning how they live when they live on the ship, learning what it is that brought them into the cruise ship industry. It was really fantastic. We got to know our cabin steward a little bit. Her name was Madonna. She's very nice, and they really go out of their way to make you have a good time and to make sure you're enjoying yourself and enjoying the cruise and all that it has to offer, and giving you little tips on how to make best use of your time on board. And the bartenders were fantastic. They were mixing up Star Trek themed drinks every day. But yeah, the staff were another highlight. That cruise was done with Norwegian Cruise Lines. Next year, for whatever reason, the company that puts together the Star Trek cruise is called Entertainment Cruise Productions, ECP. They're switching from Norwegian next year and moving on to Royal Caribbean. So we're on a different ship. I don't know why that is. One reason, if it's not a reason, it's a lucky happenstance. Next year's cruise coincides with the 25th anniversary of Voyager. And the ship we're traveling on next year is a Voyager class ship.
That's probably part of the reason, I'm guessing.
Could be, yeah.
Yeah, actually, when I graduated from cooking school, I looked into possibly working on a cruise ship, and the idea of being on a boat, trapped on a boat for months on end, was not appealing.
Yeah, I didn't know how I'd react.
You went to cooking school, but I'm working in the kitchen?
Yeah, go figure that one out. Because I'm working security as well.
Yeah, I didn't know how I would react to being on a cruise ship because I've never been on one before. I mean, I don't think of myself as a claustrophobic person. I've never been seasick. But it turns out I loved it. You do notice the motion of the ship, even though it's vast. I think it had 2,500 passengers or so on it. I mean, it's a large ship. But you can feel the motion of the ocean. And everything is scaled down quite a bit so they can make efficient use of space. But by the end of the cruise, I certainly didn't find myself, yearning to be back on land. Had the cruise lasted another 3 weeks, I'd have been up for it. So yeah, I think traveling around, as long as you're not one of those people who is prone to motion sickness, the shipboard life seems like it'd be pretty cool.
I think the bigger the ship, the less you feel it too.
Yeah, I was surprised I could feel it at all. I was surprised I could feel it at all because the ship was quite big. The ship we're going on next year, the Voyager class, is quite a bit bigger. I think the maximum capacity of the cruise we were on, it was sold out, was just under 2,500. The ship we're taking next year is 3,000 passengers.
Wow.
And it's almost sold out.
The entire ship is Star Trek. I mean, everybody who booked that cruise was part of the Star Trek group?
Yep, it's a special charter just for the Star Trek cruise. So it's all Star Trek all the time. And so, which is great because that means the whole ship, since it's designed to appeal only to Star Trek cruisers, the whole ship is redesigned slightly to reflect the theme of Star Trek. So all the elevators were decked out as turbo lifts. And
nice.
You'd get into the turbo lift, whatever number it was, turbo lift 13 opens and you step in. And it was like a turbo lift in Deep Space Nine with ads all around the top for Quark's Bar, with quotes from the Rules of Acquisition, other Star Trek referencey things. It was just fantastic. And there's this huge entertainment cube. They called it the Borg cube on the pool deck. So the top deck of the ship. There's also a mini deck 13, but deck 12 is the main pool deck. And you go up there, and at the end of the pool, there are a bunch of pools. There's a huge cube, and each of the four sides facing out carry entertainment. And it'll generally be, one thing being shown on all four of those screens so that people from any direction can see it. But it was constantly on with some form of Star Trek entertainment. Like every night they would play Star Trek movies. Through the day, they would play episodes of even the animated series. Or episodes of any of the other series. They showed a Weakest Link episode from the 1980s or 90s with the cast of Star Trek playing against each other. And just everywhere you went, there was some Star Trek thing going on. And as I said, even the names of the drinks in the bar were changed up to reflect Star Trek themed drinks. So I tried Tranya, I tried Romulan Ale, I tried Blood Wine. And of course, they're just, drinks that they ordinarily serve with Star Trek names tacked on. But it was just nice to have that consistent theme throughout the entire ship. It wouldn't be nearly as fun if half the people on board were not involved in Star Trek in any way. The crew of the ship isn't necessarily into Star Trek. The maitre d' at one of the restaurants we ate at one night, there's a bunch of restaurants on board. And the maitre d' mentioned that a person on her staff had no idea what Star Trek was.
Oh boy.
And so was very confused by the cruise.
Hey, Randall, I have a question for you. We live in the age of trolls. Was there any trolls on the ship? People may dress as stormtroopers just to troll the Star Trek folks.
Well, the lovely thing about the people on the cruise, at least in my experience, is they're a really welcoming, accepting community who share a common interest, right? Like, you're not going to lay out a few $1,000 to go and ruin someone else's vacation.
Right.
There are people who have invested a significant chunk of coin to go and celebrate their fandom. And were there people dressed up as Princess Leia and stormtroopers? Absolutely. At the costume party, there were people dressed up as all kinds of stuff.
Awesome.
There was a TARDIS. Yeah. But everyone, again, I sound like I'm fanboying all over the place. I swear I'm not being paid by Entertainment Cruise Productions to do this, but everyone was lovely. I mean, you walk up to perfect strangers and know that you share some common interest with them because they want to be on the Star Trek cruise. And so you just walk up to someone and say, typically, hey, is this your first Star Trek cruise? And then the conversation flows. And everyone was very open, kind, lovely. No one seemed to be trying to ruin anyone else's vacation. I bumped into a couple of people who had some complaints about the cruise. There weren't things that I would have complained about. But yeah, there were some people who didn't like that you, generally speaking, aren't supposed to go up to the stars and ask for an autograph or go up and ask them for a selfie. While you're hanging out on the cruise, you can go and hang out with them and chat with them, but don't engage with them as a fan freaking out over a star, because there are specific times for autograph sessions and photo sessions, and those are paid opportunities. So, that's one way the cruise kind of makes money. And a couple of people complained that it made the stars seem a bit aloof, that you weren't allowed to go up and take a selfie with them. But I didn't find that at all. I found that the stars were lovely, and some of them would even offer up a selfie, like, hey, whip out your camera, let's do a selfie, and at certain times. But no one was there to crap on anyone else's vacation. By and large, people loved it. There are two very large Facebook communities for the cruise I was on was called Star Trek The Cruise 3, because it was the third iteration, and next year is 4. There's a Facebook page for each of those cruises, and the communities on those pages are quite lovely as well, and very inclusive and friendly, and all interested in making sure that everybody has a good time. So yeah, no trolling.
That's awesome.
Very cool.
So let me put it this way, Randall. As a single person, is it a good place? Is a cruise a good option for me to go to there to meet lovely people?
Yeah, absolutely. There are special events geared toward all manner of things, but there are singles meetups, solo meetups. And it's not necessarily people who are looking for, the pleasures of Risa or some umaks, but it's people who are, even if you're not seeking Jamaharong, you can go to these single meetups and just meet some friends. But yeah, there are definitely people there trying to hook up. But it certainly, it didn't seem to be burdensome for those present. I mean, you know what you're going for, and there are singles meetings. There are where you get together as just a bunch of single people and watch a Star Trek episode or go to a panel that's just for singles. Another interesting subgroup that was meeting every day on the cruise, I noticed that about 4 p.m. there was a meeting called Friends of Bill W. And I didn't know what that meant. And I thought maybe this might be an interesting thing that I'm missing out on. So I asked a few people. And it turns out that on most cruise ships, there are meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous. And because drinking is quite commonplace on cruises. You can buy an unlimited booze package, and there was some serious day drinking going on by some people. But it would be difficult traveling as an alcoholic amidst all of that. So there are support groups for that. People were just the universal theme of supportiveness and kindness toward each other. So if you did go on this cruise in the hope of meeting someone, chances are they're going to be a nice person. I didn't meet anyone who I didn't enjoy talking to. And another odd thing, it was a weirdly educated crowd. And by weirdly educated, I don't mean their education was weird. I mean that everyone had a lot of education. And I hadn't necessarily been expecting that. I was posing for photos with all sorts of people on the costume nights. And there's a photo of me and a woman dressed up as an Orion slave girl who's also wearing a Hooters costume. And it was only after discussion that, you've got me in my dorky Data pajamas and her dressed up as an Orion Hooters girl. And we realized everyone in the photo had a PhD.
Wow.
Yeah, she's a professor from Texas. I'm a professor in Canada. And I kept bumping into people who had doctorates or master's degrees. So I think Star Trek does appeal to an educated crowd. I think that the cost of the cruise, it's not insignificant. So it's going to be people who have excess cash lying around and also the ability to take some time off. So it seems to be a big draw for academics. But I met geology academics. I met one person who was a chemist. I was traveling with another law professor. I met a psychology prof, a whole bunch of professors on the cruise. They actually brought in professors for the cruise as well. Dr. Erin McDonald, I hope I'm not getting her name wrong. She was fantastic. She is a physicist, and she was giving lectures on the physics of Star Trek. And she was absolutely fantastic. So there was a lot of sort of academic-y but fun stuff happening as well.
Hey, Randall, I've been to a lot of conventions. I don't think you've been to a lot of conventions, have you?
Not Star Trek ones. I've never been to any, but
Okay.
I've been to lots of law conventions.
Oh,
which
yeah,
are less fun.
Yeah, definitely less
I'm
fun.
sure they're the same.
Yeah, exactly the same.
Yeah,
The cosplay is totally different.
Oh, dear Lord. So one thing about conventions, since I've been to like 7 different Star Wars celebrations over the years, and I'm going to my 8th one, which is in April, is the lineups. Yeah, part of the fun could say you wait in line for 8 hours to get into a room. By about day 3, it gets kind of old. How was the lines for these events?
Negligible. The biggest events are the evening shows where Brent Spiner's going to get up and do song and dance for an hour and a half, or you might have the whole cast of TNG up on the stage to watch an episode with you and mock themselves in the episode, right? So there'd be these big nightly events that were sort of the main event of the night. There's a concert by Thomas Dolby. Those are the events at which you might expect the line to be largest, because it was everyone essentially wanting to go into the theater. But what they do is they divide it into 2 shows. So there's a 6 p.m. show and a 9 p.m. show. And you either have a blue card. You choose when you book your passage on the cruise, whether you want to be an early show person or a late show person. And I was an early show person. I would line up at 5:30, and even the lineups were fun though, right? You line up and you're surrounded by Andorians and Klingons and Tellarites and Borg, and you're all chatting about how much you love everything that's happening to you, and you can get fantastic seats if you show up 15-20 minutes before even the big shows. If you want, some of the shows that were held, the smaller panels were held in a room that they were calling 13 Forward. It was a lounge and a bar area. If you wanted to sit up near the front, you wanted to get there, 45 minutes early. But that didn't seem burdensome, again, because you're in there. It's a bar. There are people bringing you drinks. There are Star Trek folk wandering around. You might, turn around and see that you're sitting next to Will Wheaton. And so waiting for things was not a huge deal. It certainly didn't feel like a burden to me. And I never found that I was standing in line in a way that vexed me at all. We would sometimes line up quite early for a thing, only because there wasn't something booked for it in advance. And again, the lineups tended to be fun. You'd get there and there wouldn't be that many people around. But when they'd start to gather, you would just start to talk about Star Trek with all these new friends you were meeting. And I didn't have that experience at all. They have it planned out. As I was saying, there are multiple events happening at any given time. And it seemed to spread us out quite nicely. For most events. There were some events that everyone wanted to go to, but even with those, I certainly never had any difficulty getting a seat where I wanted.
That's awesome. How about the food? We have to talk about food. Okay.
Yeah, the food was really good. A couple of pro tips when it comes to food. When you book passage on the cruise, your payment for your room includes access to a whole bunch of restaurants for free, where you can just go and eat however much you want. Some of them are buffet style, some of them are table service style. But there are a host of restaurants all around the ship. There are also 6 or 7 upgrade restaurants where, for an additional upcharge, I think it's like $30 American, you can go to that restaurant. And again, you're not paying a la carte in some of those restaurants. You just pay that upcharge and then you eat whatever you like in the restaurant. And then you can eat at those restaurants instead of the free stuff. And then there are another couple of restaurants that are, in fact, a la carte, where you pay individually for the dishes that you order. And the restaurants were all different styles. The upgraded restaurants, there was a Brazilian one that was redone as called Klingon Carnivoria. So it was a Klingon restaurant. It's actually a Brazilian restaurant. There's a French restaurant that was done up like, I think it was Quark's Bistro. And for these restaurants, you pay an upcharge. Now, is the food markedly better at the upgraded restaurants? Not uniformly. The food was good on the cruise. Like, just the default was the food is good. At the upgraded restaurants, you had slightly different offerings to try. And depending on your taste, you might find that they were much better. The thing I like about the upgraded restaurants, and the pro tip is this, go to the upgraded restaurants if you can, because your chances of sitting at a table next to a star are pretty high. The first night, my buddy Tom and I booked a reservation at the Klingon Carnivora, the Brazilian restaurant, which is a cool little restaurant where you have your own individual attendant who comes by just bringing skewers of meat and asking you if you want to try this kind of meat, and he explains to you how it's been prepared, what it is, and shaves it off, and you sit there and eat it. I hear this recognizable voice coming from somewhere in my southwest, and I turn, and Casey Biggs is at the next table. That's Damar from Deep Space Nine. And he's sitting there with his wife, and he struck up conversation, which is lovely because it's very opening of them to do that, because you don't want to intrude on their time. They must know that we would love for our time to be intruded upon by them, right? So he just said, how are you guys doing tonight? And so we were all happy, and we offered to send a bottle of Canar to his table. And he's like, oh, God, not that crap. Send bourbon. So going to the upgraded restaurants, that happened to us a number of times. Where actually, Casey Biggs 2 nights in a row, he may have thought we were stalking him. And like, not just 2 nights in a row at the same restaurant, 2 nights in a row at the next table with Casey Biggs. So that was kind of funny. But another night, we were at a table just over from Will Wheaton and his wife, Anne. Another night, the last night of the cruise, we went to one of the non-upcharge restaurants, and there was a table of, half the cast members just decided to come in and take a big table. And they were sitting there enjoying the last night of the cruise. So short answer, food was great. Pro tip, do take advantage if you go to the cruise of the upcharge restaurants, because you get additional opportunities for these nice little fun encounters with the staff, or with the crew rather. And by the crew, I mean the stars who are traveling on board. They refer to them as the crew. Another useful pro tip with respect to food, I found that by booking the early show, by going at the 6 p.m. showings rather than the 9 p.m. showings, that I was having a late dinner. And that seems, at least in my very low empirical data experience, seemed to coincide with when the cast members were having dinner. So it led to more lucky encounters.
Okay, Randall, on this point, this is a very serious question. Okay, I want you to spill the beans. What's
Alrighty.
the dirt? Did you get any dirt on the cast members? Like any people passed out? Is there any sexual escapades? Well, what? Tell us the truth. Come on.
Okay. I love her with my whole heart, Denise Crosby. Either she is, they need not be mutually exclusive. Either she is a brilliant actress, or she got really drunk. And she was hilarious. Like, she wasn't messy drunk, right? Like the sort of person who you're like, you might need some help. I'm going to take you home now. But she was hilariously drunk on one night when they were playing a game. They would have these little celebrity game show contests, and they were playing a game called Celebrity Heads, where the celebrities would sit on the stage, and behind them would be a little chunk of paper that would have a name of some person, place, or thing on it that accorded with a theme that had been selected by the host. So it might be, occupations. And each cast member would have an occupation behind their head. And they'd have to ask yes or no questions to the audience. The audience would shout yes or no back at them to try to suss out what the occupation was that was sitting behind their head. And Casey Biggs had stripper. I think Denise Crosby had mortician. Oh, no, that was Kenneth Mitchell had mortician. But they all have these occupations behind them. She was so very drunk that it seemed to be getting on the nerves of the host a little bit, but he was quite good humored about it. One of the categories, they had to identify a person, and her person who was listed behind her head was Pee Wee Herman. And the first one of the first questions she asked was, is this person an actor? And everyone yelled out yes. And have I slept with this person? And we're all like, we don't know. Probably not, but maybe. And then she, when we didn't know, she said, wait, is it Ken? So Kenneth Mitchell, who plays Cole of House Core on Discovery, he was sitting next to her. And that he's like, I've never slept with you. And she said, the night is young.
Wow.
To which Casey Biggs replied, and so is he, because he's a bit younger than Denise Crosby. But yeah, she was quite tipsy. But again, not in a way that would make her dangerous to pedestrians in traffic.
Not in a Friends of Bill W. way.
No, not in a way that was in any way problematic. And again, she is quite a good actress. She could have been putting it on. I just don't know. But I mean, they were drinking repeatedly up on stage while playing the game. So, I mean, they probably were a little bit sozzled. One of the other highlights of the cruise for me also involved Denise Crosby. I don't know if you remember the first season of The Next Generation. I know some people try to bury that season. There's an episode called Justice where Wesley crushes some flowers.
Yes.
And is sentenced to death.
Yeah.
Well, it's universally regarded as one of the worst episodes of Star Trek, of any kind of Star Trek of all time. And it will now forever be my favorite episode because what they decided to do was Michael Dorn, Denise Crosby, Will Wheaton came into the theater with us, like it was all set up in advance. And they had the ability to pause the show, and they were all mic'd. And they sat with us. I was sitting right next to Denise Crosby. And by right next to her, I mean, like, she was seated next to me in the theater. And Michael Dorn was on her other side, and Will Wheaton was some chairs distant. And they watched the show, and they made fun of it. Like, they would pause it, and they would make fun of each other's lines.
Like an MST3K type thing?
Yeah, essentially MST3K. Nice. They were full on doing that, and it was hilarious. And they're making fun of each other's dialogue. They're making fun of their own dialogue. There's this one scene in that episode where Wesley is about to be condemned to death, and one of the guards who's going to kill him has this syringe, and he pulls it out. And, you know, anyone looking at it, watching the episode, oh, look, he's got a syringe. And he goes to approach Wesley with this like long needle with a plunger on it. So like screaming out the word syringe in your head, this is what this thing is. And he's heading toward Wesley, and Yar stops him, knocks it out of his hand, bends over, picks up this thing that is obviously a syringe, holds it up and says, it looks like some sort of syringe. And it's the dumbest line ever delivered in the history of dumb lines. And Denise Crosby reacting to herself delivering a dumb line was just magical. She was so hilarious, and she was apologizing to the universe for having uttered that line. And you got some insight because I think Will Wheaton or one of them said, what were we thinking? And Michael Dorn stood up and said, we were thinking how great it was to have a job. Right. And you forget this is
a good point, actually.
Yeah, this is season 1 of a series that people thought was going to tank, that these actors haven't necessarily had a ton of work beforehand. And here they are getting a regular paycheck, and they're just, you know, standing where they're told to stand and saying what they're told to say. And they're not engaging as critically with the characters as they would in subsequent seasons. And it was really interesting to think, you know, you guys are here working today, and that was you working there, right? You're not Worf. You're not Yar. You're Denise Crosby. You're Michael Dorn. And for you, these are acting jobs. It was neat seeing how they experienced that or getting some insight into that. So that was one of the highlights of the cruise for me as well.
That's amazing that you were just randomly bumping into these famous people and having conversations, and that they were willing to have conversations with all these random people that they're going by. That sounds exhausting for them.
I think it would be, which is why, like at the outset, there's a cruise director, a guy named JT, really nice fellow, gave a little speech about, you know, do respect the privacy of the stars. You're going to bump into Jonathan Frakes walking up the hall one day, and, you know, say hello, treat him like you would treat any other fellow passenger, or, you know, pay him a compliment. You know, I love your performance in movie X or Y, or your directing in Discovery, whatever. But don't freak out all over them and try to hug them and treat them like in any way that might exhaust them, because we want these people to come back and we want them to have a good time. And I think the general verdict was that they did have lovely times. You can also, for additional charges, pay for individual experiences hosted by the stars. For example, you could go with Nana Visitor and go swimming with stingrays with her. And so it'd be you and like 20 other people out swimming around in a bathing suit and with a bunch of stingrays, and Nana Visitor hanging out with you. Major Kira is there, or Colonel Kira, I suppose, is there talking to you about fish, which is just super cool. Or you could go to a cocktail course. That would be something that would appeal to the patrons of the bar. A cocktail making class taught by Casey Biggs. And so there are these little upcharge experiences that you can also do that are quite fun. Some of them are free too. Like there was a drawing class, by Rekha Sharma, who is one of the actors who plays on Discovery. She's Lieutenant Landry, the security officer on Discovery.
Oh, right, yeah.
Who dies twice in season 1.
Yeah.
But she was great. She was actually a massive, to use the word, discovery on the cruise, because she was just such a cool person. And she did a drawing class. She did a donut decorating class, of all things. The stars are asked, what activities do you like to do, and do you want to do them with people? And so those are two of the things she picked. Jason Isaacs, who not only plays Captain Lorca, but is also famously Lucius Malfoy in the Harry Potter series. He was just genius at everything he did. And I hate to be fanboying all over the place, but that's what I'm doing.
It's Jason Isaacs. Come on.
Well, yeah, he's fantastic. One of his favorite things in life is tennis. And so he said, I will play tennis against people. And he was playing tennis against multiple people at once and beating them all. Yeah, dude is phenomenal, and they're also multi-talented. Just sort of randomly, Jason Isaacs and Mary Chieffo, who plays L'Rell, who's now the Klingon Chancellor in Discovery. She, again, amazing. Another person who I had no sense of beforehand, but she's just fantastic. They got up on stage and just seemingly randomly broke into song and sang a round of Damn It, Janet from the Rocky Horror Picture Show. They just decided to put on a show. I was sitting in a bar, as one does, when Chase Masterson got on stage and just started singing. These things kept happening, and not necessarily planned, or if they were planned, the plans weren't shared with me. And they just sort of coalesced and took place before your eyes in a way that was that made you not want the cruise to ever end, and made you rush to the computer and rebook if you're anything like me.
The other thing that astonished me was that when you first talked about this Star Trek cruise, I figured, okay, it's going to be one of those, smaller cruise ships because they can only get so many people to do it. But no, this was actually one of the big jumbo cruisers. I was looking at the website, and it's one of those vast, huge ships.
Yeah, they're massively popular. The first cruise was 2 years ago for the 50th anniversary of Star Trek, where they decided to experiment with this, and it was wildly successful. And so last year, the second year of the cruise, they did 2 cruises back to back. They were both called Star Trek The Cruise 2 because they each had exactly the same agenda. But they were able to fill the boat twice. I think that may have been exhausting for the stars because you're sailing for 2 weeks, performing the same shows 2 weeks in succession. This year, they opted to go only with one booking, but they sold out. They didn't sell out immediately. For a long time, they had sold like 70% of the cabins, and I think people were banking on deeply discounted prices later on. Some people got to take advantage of that. They did ultimately sell out, and there were discounts on cabins in the last few months before departure. But this year, they're only planning the one. And this year, they might be attracting people they haven't hitherto attracted because the theme is Voyager. Kate Mulgrew is going to be the featured star on board. Most of the cast of Voyager is coming, which is fantastic. And then after they announced the cast that was coming next year, everyone got super excited and people started booking for next year. And then the very next day, William Shatner called in. I think it was via Twitter he may have done this and said, yeah, I'm coming next year too if you'll have me. And what are you going to say? No? So Captain Kirk's coming next year.
Nice.
Wow.
Fantastic.
Who I still think should be the Governor General of Canada, damn it.
Aw. Yeah.
Yeah.
Even if I think he still lives in LA.
Yeah, I know, but he's Canadian. He
That's
counts.
true.
We're very accepting of everyone.
That is true.
Hey, Randall, gotta ask you this because a lot of fans are really into collecting items and T-shirts and exclusives. Was there stuff you can buy there to take home, like souvenirs or action figures or things like that?
Like most things in life, this is a complicated answer. So here comes. Okay. First off, if you just want cool Star Trek stuff, just go back to your room every night because every night there are new goodies waiting for you on your bed that the staff put there for you. So night 1, I got a really cool Star Trek poster. Everyone in the cabin gets the same stuff. So Tom and I both got these fantastic Star Trek posters. Night 2, there was a backpack. Night 3, I think there were passport covers. And so it's a passport for the United Federation of Planets into which you could insert your real passport. There were baseball caps. There were T-shirts. And this all stuff just arrived as covered by what you had already paid to be on the cruise. So, it felt free. You keep getting all this free stuff. I know you've already paid to be there. So it's not exactly free. It's built into the price, but it's nice to have these little surprises. You don't know what you're going to get. There is also a souvenir store on the ship. This year, on this year's cruise, the souvenir store was not quite as extensive as I thought it might be. Maybe they're assuming that most people who are traveling on a Star Trek cruise are already awash with Star Trek memorabilia, and I suppose they might be true. But there were some T-shirts, like you could buy the Niners T-shirts for the baseball team from DS9. There were lots of photos for sale. I think people who had booked autograph opportunities with the stars would want to buy some photos that they could get signed. There was really high-end art that you could bid on and other art that you could just out and out buy, like paintings of the captains from all the series together, that sort of thing. But not as much souvenir type stuff for sale. One can imagine why. I mean, space is at a premium on a cruise ship like this, and you're not going to sell all your merchandise. So if you're bringing a bunch of merchandise on and then taking it off again at the end, that which didn't sell out, I suppose that would be quite inconvenient and burdensome. But yeah, there weren't the retail opportunities I imagined. I sort of thought there might be costumes for sale on board, for example, and I would augment my store of Star Trek costumes and actually use them on the ship. There weren't. I mean, there were other things being sold by the stars, like CDs. Chase Masterson has a CD right now. That was for sale in the souvenir shop. There were collector cups, tiki cups, Captain Kirk mugs, things like that for sale, buttons and things, but not a ton of loot to purchase. But again, I got more loot than I bargained for just by going back to my room every night.
Fantastic. Here's another question for you, Randall. You mentioned you stop at several different ports of call. What's the routine? Did people leave the ship and go into town for a couple hours, or?
Yeah, generally speaking, you wake up and you're there on port days. The docking time is usually 6 or 7 a.m. And so you wake up and you're at some island. And so the first port of call was called Great Stirrup Cay. It's the private island I mentioned before. It's kind of cool. It didn't have a dock that the ship docked at. It's what you call a tender boat port. So you're out on essentially the mothership, the huge cruise ship that you're on. And there are little boats that carry like 100 people scurrying back and forth between the island and the cruise ship. And so you get a ticket, you line up. That was the one line that was long, actually, to correct my earlier statement. There was one long line, and it was to get on the tender boat to go to Great Stirrup Cay. I lined up for maybe 20 minutes for that, 20 minutes longer than I had anticipated, and got on the line. Get on the little boat, you get ferried across the water, get on the island. And then each island was quite different in nature. So Great Stirrup Cay, it's a private island. So it's not that there are a bunch of people living there or residences you can go check out or a bunch of businesses that operate independent of the cruise line. Everything there is related to the cruise. So there were souvenirs and things you could buy. But most people just, drank rum and swam in the ocean or sunned themselves on the beach. I wandered around under the theory that I bet you that the members of the cast will want to experience the island, and I bet the likelihood is that you'll meet some here. And that's where I met Will Wheaton and his wife Ann Wheaton, and we had our long talk. We were just off in some random chunk of the island, and there no one else around, and just had a lovely conversation. They're such nice people. And so that, I found that after about an hour and a half, well, I was on cloud nine after my conversation with the Wheatons. They're lovely people. But after an hour and a half, I missed the boat, by which I mean I didn't fail to get on the boat. I wanted to be back. I was pining for the boat, is a better way to put that. And because, all kinds of Star Trek stuff was happening there. So then I got back on the Tinder boat and boated back out to the cruise ship and got back on. The next place we went was the Cayman Islands, which just made me want to do some banking. But we, and again, that was a tender boat port where we weren't actually docking. You had to get on the tender boat. And so you boated over again. And people actually live on the Cayman Islands. We're on the Grand Cayman Island, the biggest of the islands. And so I just walked around to see how people live on Grand Cayman Island. And I looked at some of the businesses, and there were lots of places to shop and everything else. And I took lots of photos to get sort of a sense of what it was like to be a local. But again, the ports of call aren't Star Trek centric. So if you're looking for a Star Trek experience, it's not going to be on the island. It's going to be back on the ship. I felt like I wanted to go to every port because I wanted to say, if I want to say I've been to the Grand Cayman Islands, I've been to the Cayman Islands, you want to at least set foot on them. So I went, and again, it was about an hour. I took a picture of myself hanging out outside the law courts because, my day job, I'm a law prof. So I took some pictures at the courts. And then I saw a barrister running along wearing his full-on court robes. And so I called to him. I said, "Excuse me, sir." And he probably thought I was going to ask him for money or something. But anyway, I told him I was a law professor from Canada, and I was, excited to meet a lawyer from the Cayman Islands. And he pretended to be excited to meet me, and we took selfies and exchanged information and had a little chat, which was lovely. And then the final port of call was Falmouth, Jamaica, which is quite an extensive port. Like, there's an entire private area that's only for people who are getting on and off cruise ships. And that has lots of souvenir type things you can purchase. Again, not Star Trek-y, but Jamaica, celebrating Jamaica. And I did something that my wife has chastised me for, quite rightly, I think. And that was, I just decided I'm going to kind of intentionally get lost in Jamaica. So I just went through all the little residential streets I could find, way off the beaten path, into some areas that probably aren't the most tourist friendly in the world. Because I just wanted to see what life was like in a port town in Jamaica. And so I walked for about an hour and a half. And when I say sort of get lost, you could see the cruise ship. It's a mighty vessel. And it was actually docked right up on the island. That was our one port where we actually docked. So it towered over the buildings, and there was the cruise ship in the distance. So I wasn't actually going to get lost, but I walked for a good hour and a half, and just took lots of pictures of life in this particular part of Jamaica, in a non-commercial, just residential chunk of Jamaica where people were going about their daily lives. I found that really interesting. But again, after about an hour and a half, 2 hours of that, I want some Star Trek stuff, and so back to the boat with me. My traveling companion chose not to avail himself of the islands. He did his own thing on the boat. He actually went to the gym and worked out a lot while I would go on the islands, and which is also a good experience. Do everything on the boat is the other advice I would give, because my buddy Tom went into the gym and is on the treadmill, and he felt a moment of annoyance arise as he realized that the guy on the next treadmill was starting to sing. And so he wondered, like, why the hell is someone singing? It's Brent Spiner.
That's awesome.
So Brent Spiner, apparently people who have to do song and dance shows like to practice singing on a treadmill, because it's quite a cardio task to try to sing and dance at the same time. And so he's running on the treadmill singing his songs from that night's performance. And just how freaking cool is that? I'm on a treadmill next to Brent Spiner and he's singing. So then he became happy that his treadmill neighbor was singing a song. And he also, while he was in the gym, Chase Masterson came in and shot a piece of a video that she was putting together. So yeah, even at the gym or at the spa, you're going to bump into castmates and have the opportunity for little fun experiences with them. And again, this is the sort of stuff that's going to stick with you. It's not every day you hop on a treadmill and there's Brent Spiner.
Very interesting.
So yeah, the ports of call were fun, but not as fun as the ship itself. Next year, there's an additional port of call. It's the cruise is 1 day longer next year than this year's cruise. Next year, where are we going? We leave from Miami again, but we're going to Punta Cana. Then we're going to San Juan, Puerto Rico. We're going to St. Thomas and to the Grand Bahama Island. And so chances are I will govern myself largely the way I did this year, and I'll go to each of the ports of call, but probably only for a couple hours. Oh, and to further answer Joel's initial question, you dock there at about 7 a.m. usually, and the pattern was by 3:30 they would call for you to head back to the ship, and the ship would leave port sometime between 4 and 5, and then you'd be off. But my favorite days were probably the at-sea days, when you weren't docking anywhere, you're just at sea the whole time. Because on the port of call days, between the hours of like 7 a.m. and 4 p.m., there wasn't very much stuff scheduled, because they expect that people are going to go and avail themselves of the port and hang out on the islands and go exploring. Those were also the times when you could purchase the expeditions with cast members, like hanging out with dolphins and Tasha Yar or whomever else. And but yeah, there wasn't a lot going on the ship while you were at the port of call. But when I say there's not a lot going on the ship, there's still tons of Star Trek stuff to do. Like, you could go up to the pool deck and watch, First Contact while you sit there and have a margarita. Or listen, they had amazing bands. I think I mentioned earlier, Thomas Dolby was there, put on a concert for us, which was super cool. So yeah, there was a ton of stuff to do, and but the more planned action was on at sea days rather than at port days.
I've actually never been on a cruise, but I really want to. I was actually looking at doing it this year. I have a really dumb question. So there's no internet, or if there is, you have to pay a large surcharge for it, right?
Did you ever? Yeah, I ended up buying the unlimited Wi-Fi package, and I think the price was like $277 or something like that, something along those lines. Yeah, it was, and that's for essentially a week of internet access. And it's a week of spotty internet access. Technology has not risen to the level where you have perfect uninterrupted internet access while on a cruise ship. That being said, I was able to upload photos to Instagram. I was able to upload stuff to Twitter. Email was a bit spotty. If someone sent you an email with attachments, you hoped and prayed that it would come through properly. So it wasn't spotty. I will purchase that again next year, and hope that the technology continues to improve ever so gradually. I liked to be able to be in touch. We had a family member who came down with a bit of an illness while I was away, so it was nice to be able to get updates about that, and see how everyone was doing. So I would get that again. Apparently, there was good internet access at the ports. I never used any of that. So on the queue, someone falling ill while I was away, I'm reminded that Ethan Phillips, plays Neelix, was also on the cruise and ended up getting a hernia while he was there and had to and he fled. So he left the cruise 2 or 3 days in. It was just after, I think it was the night of or the morning after, he did his late night comedy show. He apparently specializes in offensive jokes and did a really great stand-up routine. No original material. They're all really old jokes, but they're hilarious. And so he did his adults-only comedy routine and then herniated himself somehow and had to be carted off. So I hope he's doing well. Apparently he had a little minor procedure done to look after it. But they do have the capacity to look after you. There is a sick bay on board. And in the event of, wicked seasickness or other things that might befall you while you're on the cruise. But if something really bad happens and you want your own physicians to look after you, like Ethan Phillips did, they can buzz you off to another locale.
Are there TVs in the room, and are there channels or no?
Well, the great thing about going again is you become a pro at cruising, and I was a complete noob, so I didn't know this. Yes, there are TVs in the room. And I was walking one day on the pool deck with my buddy Tom, and I said, you know what I would love? I would love it if somewhere on the ship you could look at an overhead map that tracked where exactly your ship was on the globe or on a close-up map of this part of the world, not realizing that there's a channel for that in your room. You can go and just watch your progress where you are. I also learned on the very last day of the cruise that there were Star Trek channels. Which is, I don't really care. I probably, even when I go next year, I probably won't spend much time in my room watching Star Trek by myself because I can do that at home. In fact, I do that at home. But there's all the action is outside your room, unless you're going there for Joel purposes. All the action is
nice.
If you're going there for Jamar Harung, then it's different. But for us, all the action was taking place outside the room, and so I didn't really want to be in watching TV. But yeah, there's TV. There are movies playing all the time, and there are ship view channels, and you can there's a channel that shows you the camera from there's a camera on the very front of the ship, and you can see what lies ahead, all kinds of cool stuff like that. But yeah, television is available the whole time. The in-room facilities are pretty good. I mean, it's tight. I haven't had a roommate who was not my wife since I was a really, really, really young boy. So it was interesting traveling with a buddy from work and sharing essentially 210 or so square feet plus balcony. Because I haven't had a roommate since I was a kid. So I didn't know what that experience would be like. He's a really nice guy. Obviously, I'm not going to travel with someone who's not a close friend, but it ended up being perfect because we had slightly different schedules. I tended to wake up a couple of hours earlier than he would. And so there's only one bathroom and you're sharing a bathroom with someone, but I'd be done everything before he'd even be awake. So I'd have my shower and shave my head and do all the other things that I do every day. And then I'd buzz off and go up to the pool deck and have some breakfast. And then I'd be texting with Tom when he would wake up and he would say, okay, I'm going to head up now. And so we never had any conflict with respect to the use of space. Next year, we're getting separate cabins. Now that we know how worthwhile the experience is, we're willing to shell out more money. And we're traveling separately next year, but it's going to be fantastic.
I can see it now. If I ever do this cruise with Randall's going to be the early riser, and when he's having breakfast, I'll be going to bed.
Yeah, no doubt. And if you're seeking Jamaha you can get your own room.
Yeah, that might wake Randall up.
Lovely. This has been great. I'm considering going, but I need to make sure I can afford the money to actually spend on this. Who knows? It's next year. I'm sure there's they're not going to sell out in the meantime, right? They
might.
Yeah, I don't know.
There are something like 10 or 12 categories of rooms, and I think only 4 remain. 4 categories of room have any availability. That being said, pro tip for those who are looking for a cruise bargain, on February 5th, I suspect more rooms will become open, because if you were cruising on the Star Trek Cruise 3, which I was on, you could book for the Cruise 4 while on the ship. And one of the perks of booking on the ship was you had the absolute right to cancel your reservation up until February 5th with no risk of loss. So I suspect that a lot of people who were whooped up with enthusiasm while on the cruise booked rooms and then will abandon them sometime before February 5th when they realize that they can't get the time off work or that they want to deploy their money in another way. So right now it looks like they're going to sell out immediately, but I suspect in February a few more rooms will become open again.
Yeah,
Interesting.
very interesting.
And if you're really looking to travel with a bit of a bargain, join the Facebook page communities for the Star Trek Cruise 4. And there are roommate threads on their Facebook page where people are, they'll list all their demographic information, and you can try to get to know the person and find out if this is someone you could stand to travel with and who could stand to travel with you, even though you've never met. And there are lots of people doing that and offering up reference checks and all sorts of things. But so there are ways to get a bit of a bargain.
And that's how we'll find a wife, Joel.
Great. Yeah. Let's move on. Okay. And it's a stupid question, I know, because we have a lot of American listeners. For these islands, you require a passport, right?
Absolutely, yeah. As a Canadian traveling there, I had to have a passport with me the whole time. And when you go down to the islands, not the private island, when you go to the private island, all you take with you is your shipboard ID. You're given a lanyard to wear around your neck, and you get a special card that on that card, it's your United Federation of Planets, or it's your Starfleet ID, which is hilarious. But it's the key that opens your room, and it also has information about you on it. And the staff, by looking at this, can see what kind of drink plan you have, for example. So you hold up your card and say, I want a martini. They know whether you have to pay for that martini or not, or if you bought one of the unlimited drinks packages. And you have that card with you. That's the only ID you need for the private island. For Jamaica, for the Cayman Islands, you also needed to take photo ID with you. I didn't take my passport. I just took my driver's license with me on those excursions, but you have to have a passport with you for the cruise, just to be able to get on the boat. As a Canadian, at least, I don't know what my American brethren had to go through, but yeah, I had to do all the usual international travel stuff.
Right. Carrie, Derek, any last questions for Dr. Graham?
No, not that I think we pretty much covered everything, and I'm envious that I will probably have to sell a limb or something in order to be able to go on a cruise anytime soon.
Yeah.
Limbs are overrated. The cruise is not.
Uh-huh.
All my life I thought it was Nana Visitor, but you're saying Nana.
Well, that's how she was being introduced, and she was standing there and didn't smack anyone for pronouncing her name incorrectly. But yeah, they were saying Nana Visitor. And one of my favorite little selfie pictures that I took on the whole cruise, those of you who are my Facebook pals will have seen this. I was sitting there at a bar with Tom Telfer, the colleague who was traveling with me, and I took what looked like a selfie of us, but really what I was featuring was the fact that Jonathan Frakes and Nana Visitor were standing directly behind us. Like if we backed up one step, we would bump into them, and they were hanging out and catching up and laughing uproariously. So we got some pictures with them, and you just bump into these people. But that's what they were calling her. They were referring to her as Nana Visitor, and her husband was traveling with her, and he seems lovely. But yeah, it's a super cool way to meet and engage with these people in a way you wouldn't expect.
Very cool.
Randall, one takeaway, the one thing you love the most. Oh God, that's great.
Apologies, someone's being an asshole outside my apartment.
I thought it was like a horn on a ship.
I thought we were getting played off and taking too long.
No.
That's great.
It's just sound effects.
Okay, Randall, what's the one surprise that you will take away as like the most unique thing in your experience on the cruise?
That is awfully hard to nail down. I mean, the interactions with the cast members were the most memorable things. And I wouldn't even want to pin down to one of those because I would be doing a disservice to how lovely everyone was. I had a really nice conversation with Ken Mitchell. That was a bit of a discovery for me because, I had never seen him out of makeup. He plays one of the Klingons in Discovery, and I didn't know, he's from Toronto. We talked about my hometown of Peterborough, Ontario. He's been there. He knows the place. We chatted quite a bit, and he was just a really nice guy. And I subsequently learned that one of my former students, I used to be a professor at Osgood. I was an adjunct professor there. One of my students who I taught there grew up with being pals with Kenneth Mitchell. And so we had a person in common, which is weird. So I think it's that human connection with these iconic stars that I would have to say is the thing that stood out the most. Chatting with Will and Ann Wheaton about their experience publishing novels and kids' books, I actually gave Will Wheaton and his wife a copy of Beforelife. And I never thought that I would be giving my autograph to Will Wheaton, which was super. Not that he asked for it, but we got talking about it, and I mentioned that I had a copy, and they said that it would be lovely to receive a copy. So I just signed it for them and gave it to them. And we arranged to meet up that evening. I'd given them the book. I didn't have it with me at the time. But those little kinds of interactions where you put a human face on the people, see how multi-talented a person has to be to make it in Hollywood, to realize that these people have many arrows in their quiver, as the expression is. And, a lot of them can sing, a lot of them can dance, a lot of them have super quick wit. Jason Isaacs really impressed me as someone who just seems to exude intelligence. He doesn't have a ton of formal education, but actually, I may be wrong. He might have a master's degree in acting or something along those lines, but he's so smart. And just watching him be quick-witted and fire off hilarious answers to impromptu questions and getting to know a little bit about them, see what these people are like when they're not in character. That's what stood out to me as the most fantastic element of it. But that being said, I won't gainsay any element of the cruise experience. This was my first time as a Canadian not being freezing cold in January. So the cruise aspect itself is fantastic. Yeah, the post cruise sadness is real. You miss being on the boat when you get back. I of course love being with my lovely wife back at home now. But I think about the cruise a lot, and I'm certainly looking forward to going next year. So there's too many wonderful things about the cruise to pin it down to just one thing. But if I had to, it would be those interactions with the cast.
That's great. That's great. Randall, thank you so much for sharing your experiences. We look forward to having you on again to talk about anything we want, because you're a staff member. You don't do it every episode, but you do enough, and we really value your inputs and your wits and your experience. As for the Star Trek cruise, if anyone wants to check out the website, they are at StarTrekTheCruise.com. So there's that. And let's close the doors, because I need a drink and I need to actually plan if I'm going to go down for next year or not. So let's see. You can find the SciFi Pubcast on Twitter. It's managed by me. It's at SciFi Pubcast. We also have a Facebook group, which is managed by Derek. Hi, Derek.
Hi.
Yeah, and we have an Instagram account, which is what I do, and that account is more geared towards beer, food, anything bar related. It gives me something to do when I sit at the bar by myself playing on my phone. What else? If you want, please leave us a positive Apple Podcast review. It helps others find the show. You can also email us if you have any issues, or you want to be on the podcast, or you just want to have some suggestions or make fun of Derek. It's at email. The email is management@scifipubcast.space. Carrie, what's your Twitter address?
My Twitter handle is Carrie Blackfire42. That's KERI Blackfire42.
And Derek?
I'm at Derek J. Beebe.
And Randall, the author of Beforelife. Go buy his book.
Thanks. I'm at Randal_Graham.
And I'm at Joel_Welch, WELCH. It's closing time. Folks, please make it home safe. We'll see you next time. Bye now.
Music provided courtesy of Logan Rathbone. Podcast logo by Duran. Copyrighted Joe Welch. Listen responsibly. And we can't wait for your next visit to our fine establishment. Cheers.